Hello everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Turning AI Investments into Measurable Business Outcomes. I'm Ashwini, I'll be your moderator today. We appreciate you to taking a time for joining us today. And across APAC, organizations are investing significantly in AI. Yet many businesses are still asking important questions. How do we turn AI investments into measurable business value? Today's session is designed to answer exactly that. Rather than focusing on AI tools alone, we will explore how organizations can build structured workflows, prioritize high impact use cases, measurable ROI, and create a triangle business outcomes within our first 90 days. Before we begin the session, a few housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded. The recording will be shared with you all the registered attendees after the event. Please submit your questions throughout the session using a Q&A or chat. We will resolve at the end of the Q&A live session. So if you're experiencing any kind of technical issues, simply refresh your browsers and reconnect. Well, it's time. It's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Rahul. And we are excited to hear their insights, how organization can move behind AI experimentations and they achieve measurable business results. Over to you, Rahul.
All right. Thank you so much, Ashwini. And thanks to each and every one of you who have joined the session. I think today is Monday, and I understand how difficult it is from opting out from a business operation and then coming into a 30-minute webinar. But trust me, I am going to keep it really quick. I'm going to keep it a lot more objective in terms of understanding and how Adoptify AI really turns out to be a ROI calculator and measurable calculator for each and every organizations in today's AI world. Uh, First things first, I think we are going to move beyond the typical AI conversation from experimentation and hype, maybe to execution, operationalization of strategy, and measurable enterprise value. So we are going to talk about three basic pillars, which is towards the execution, business operations, and operationalizing the complete strategy on AI, and how we can have measurable enterprise value. So we are going to discuss all these three things, and I'm going to keep this as a monologue. Of course, I cannot unmute people to talk here, but I would expect people to do a lot more on the chat. So you can probably open up your chat and keep your fingers running. I would be able to ask you a few questions, and it would be great to know where you guys are from and which company do you belong to. If you can type it in the chat, it would be great for me to understand so that I can set the context in terms of who I'm talking to. And I think there are a lot more people. I might not be able to take the names, but I definitely would be able to answer everything and keep it a lot more objective and informative for each and every one of you. So before we begin, I think I've set the context in terms of letting you know. I want to set the context, in fact, to let you know what we are going to cover. Of course, turning AI investments into measurable business outcome is something that every CXOs, every CFOs, every CTOs are looking at right now. But we are going to first talk about the reality gap. We are going to talk about the AI reality gap, where the market actually stands today, and why AI adoption is scaling, but ROI is not. So we are going to talk about the problem statement. Then we are going to go a little deep on the problem statement, why there is a misalignment. Is it because of the people enablement? It is because of the workflow integration? Or is it because of the non governance around AI or usage of AI is what we are going to talk about, which is again going to be a core problem. And then we are going to talk about how Adoptify as an organization has developed a 3 into 3 framework, which really helps diagnose your current maturity, align AI with business outcomes, and move from typical experimentation to real adoption of AI. So we are going to talk about that. And of course, we have an operating model, which we call it as Adapt Ops. We are going to talk about how that model works, what is the kind of flow that is involved into the model, and then we are going to talk about the real use cases that we have had with multiple enterprises. If this sounds exciting to you, I would just request every one of you on the chat, if you can write down your email or maybe your name and where you're from. It will be great, and then I'll begin my webinar. Again, I'm going to talk a lot more on the problem statement. I'm going to talk about how we solve that problem and what are the key use cases we have done it with in the past with multiple organizations. So it would be great, Mohit, if you can just move the next slide to the next slide. I would be able to take everyone through what exactly I mean by when I want to say the problem statement. So I think if you see the stats slide, it very categorically mentions about 78% of the organizations have already embedded AI into at least one of the business functions. 71% are actively using generative AI in workflows, but here is the gap. Only 23% are actually seeing material bottom line impact. What does this tells us? If someone wants to really read this Venn diagram, it is to understand that we have actually solved the access to AI or access of AI in the enterprise. But what we have not solved for is the value extraction, workflow integration, and outcome measurement. And that's where AI investment is scaling, but ROI maturity is still a lagging indicator. And that's where we really want to be on the forefront of technology and innovation both, to ensure that there is a right ROI that is mapped to every investment that an organization makes, because it's a decision at the end of the day, from a point of view where we would be, or enterprise would be able to drive productivity, reduce cost, and increase and improve the efficiency of the entire system that they have built. So I'm just going to go into the next slide very quickly to gauge some of the understanding that you have had about your own organization, which to which we I want personally you to tell me where are you in your AI journey. So just a quick reflection point and something that I want you to think very critically: are you investing but struggling to measure outcomes? Are you seeing pockets of success but unable to scale, or dealing with governance and risk slowing down things? So there are around four different options. We have invested in AI, but outcomes remain difficult to measure. Some teams are seeing results, but success isn't scaling across the organization. Adoption is growing, but governance and oversight are struggling to keep up the pace. We are ready to scale AI, but need a clear roadmap for enterprise-wide outcomes. If any one of you can just put down A, B, C, D, I think it will help us in terms of understanding where you are. I think Sebastian has written D, that we are ready to scale AI, but need a clear roadmap for enterprise-wide outcomes. Great, Sebastian. Anyone else who want to write it down on the chat, feel free to discuss it out, because the more you discuss with us, the more contextual the conversations would be, rather than just giving a monologue in terms of telling you what we do, why we do, and then probably telling you about, you know, how AI, how Adoptify is positioned in the market. So thank you so much for people who have responded back. I think most of them have responded B and D. Some teams are seeing results, but success isn't scaling across the organization. Mohit, if you can move to the next slide, I would quickly want to talk about the problem statement again. AI activity is growing, business outcomes are not guaranteed. I think, typically when I was putting across these things, you might be able to see four things: adoption without direction, workflow without transformation, measurement without visibility, and governance without enablement. A lot of adoption has to do a lot with enablement of people. A lot of workflow integration has to do a lot again with change management. A lot of measurement without visibility has to do a lot with how you define the success of AI deployment. In technical terms, you have distributed AI usage, but there is no centralized operating model or value orchestration layer that needs to be driven to ensure that whatever money you have been putting in, or whatever time and investment that you are going to do into deploying AI into your organization, has the right metrics to be chased, and you are able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's where AI investments don't fall because of technology. They fall when adoption, workflow, measurement, and governance fail without an alignment. So it's not something which is more about just having the tools and deploying the tools and typically measuring the usage of the tools, but it has to do a lot with assessment of your people skills. It has to do a lot with organization skills. It has to do a lot with the governance, and that's what Adoptify AI in today's day does it for multiple organizations. So the core insight here, if you can go on to the next slide, Mohit, I would be able to tell that AI initiatives don't fall because of model performance, but specifically there are three major reasons: people readiness, organization readiness, trust and governance. Which, in typically, if I want to talk about in very simple business language, it is human capability layers, operational workflows, and governance frameworks. I think these are the real outcome. This is where real outcome emerge only when there is a system that co-evolve synchronously rather than actually solving one particular problem in silo. You can have great people knowing about AI, but if they do not get the right support from the infrastructure team, they might not be able to adopt it. If infrastructure team has a lot more to offer in terms of AI deployment, AI development, but people readiness is something that is lagging, the communication, the AI language that the people need to understand and grasp again becomes and makes it fall short of the expectation. And then of course you have trust and governance. So what this clearly means is there is a failure because of system misalignment rather than just understanding one particular tool or maybe going forward with one particular model of AI that you feel that can actually solve problems for you. But in typically what we do today, the best way to adopt AI is to have a flexible tech stack rather than fixing yourself to one particular tech stack, which is maybe a Microsoft Copilot, a Cisco, a Google Studio, or maybe fixing up everything to Gemini. That's where the real adoption stops because every model is evolving every day, and that's one of the reasons it says that the real outcome emerges only when the system co-evolve synchronously. So let's go to the next slide where I want to talk really about how we have developed the three stages, three track methodology. And this is not something that is a very hypothetical model, or this is a model which has been developed uh, from a marketing standpoint, right? I mean, this is the model that we feel is very important to drive AI adoption. And this is what we have been seeing over the last 27 years in the industry. We have been working very closely with enterprise clients. So, what we know about is people readiness. This is your human AI interface layer, wherein you have skills, adoption behavior, prompt literacy, decision augmentation, all of these things. And I can talk about a lot more things in people readiness. One of the important thing is of course upskilling the traditional workforce that you have. One of the things that you need to have is adoption behavior, where you need to have change management in place, where you need to have mindset training in place, where you need to have prompt literacy in place, you need to have decision augmentation in place. So a lot of people and a lot of organization fails in driving AI adoption because they feel AI adoption has a lot to do with internal deployment of tools or development of tools in house, and or maybe developing an innovation layer around what they do in the technology side, and that can really bring a lot more business back to the organization. That doesn't work like that. So it's very important that people readiness is one of the very key players of what we do today. So we ensure that the human AI interface layer that you have, which has skills, adoption behavior, prompting literacy, decision augmentation, maybe model understanding, and the most important thing is there are multiple models wherein there are model hallucinations that happens at the end of the day. There are more, so there needs to be an understanding on the limitation of AI as well. So model hallucination, model drifting, all these problem statements keeps on coming in. But the best strategy to really look at this is to understand that and optimize at your level. So organization readiness is again the second part of what I want to talk about. This is where your workflow orchestration happens, where we are now no more now talking about theoretically. You are actually going back and changing things. Mohit, if you can go on to the next slide, I think people will be able to relate it better. So the 3 and 3 outcome framework that we have right now is people readiness, org readiness, trust and governance. And then we have defined the organization into three different stages. Every organization can be cohorted into three different stages: adopting, adapting, and accelerating. When we talk about adopting, it is more about building AI literacy from a people standpoint or building awareness around AI so that the communication is standardized across business and technical teams. If we talk about org readiness, it is more about assessing where your organization is, what maturity they are into, what is the kind of data readiness, what is the kind of people readiness, what is the kind of infrastructure readiness, what is the kind of you know opportunities that are available right now for us to integrate AI, which is where we call it as use case mapping. So it's very important and imperative to understand that when you are into an adopting stage, org readiness is very important to to be aware about where your organization is it that there is a data readiness problem, is it there maybe understanding of the use case is a problem, because a lot of time people who want to deploy AI without really understanding if there is a certain use case into that particular function, business function in that particular industry or not. And if there are not, we end up force fitting a lot of models into it, and then we realize that we have force fitted. Now we have to show some ROI. We do some extra XYZ, and then we try to show something which does not really add value and it does not have any materialism to what we do. If we talk about adapting, if we talk about the trust and governance in adopting, it's of course having the guardrails being established across, that there are always internal policies now that has been implemented across the organization to ensure that there is the right usage of AI, a responsible use of AI into the enterprise. So adopting, adapting, and accelerating. If I talk about adapting, it is more of a matured organization where the people know the application of AI. They apply AI in daily tasks, maybe not very exhaustively, but they really do. Just like Sebastian has mentioned that we are seeing the success and we are ready to scale, but we do not have a roadmap. Something like that. So Sebastian, for you, the organization would be in adapting stage. Trust and governance, of course, there can be an oversight in terms of defining when multiple users are using it daily, right? So you need to understand how are you going to define the success of that particular business function in terms of using AI, and how responsible are they using AI to. And then, of course, we have accelerating, where leadership, scaling. When we talk about only, you know, talking about scaling the system completely into into a way where we are able to see everyone using AI, everyone is able to extract value out of AI, no matter whether they're able to see the real value or not, but at least on a high level they have been able to. When I say real value, what I mean by that is, we do not translate productivity by saying 50% productivity has improved or increased. It's typically not realistic. What we have seen is, if even a 12%, 15%, or 18% mark, if you're able to accelerate and automate a lot of workflows. Because when we talk about today in our organization, we talk about, how can I do this work without having these four people? How can I not talk to these four people or five people around me, and I can just do this work on my own, focusing using AI, so that my dependency on other people reduces? How can I don't have a middle management, and I can just talk to the managers, or maybe the senior management can directly talk to the frontliners? How can we really become a 10x organization? These kind of conversations has started coming in, because people have understood that there is a realized value around AI. It's no more a hype. Of course, there were things that were hyped for marketing, but now if you see, the models are getting matured every day. Everyone, I was using ChatGPT back then in 2024. Now I'm using maybe Anthropic Claude, and now I'm using multiple models of Anthropic Claude. Now I can deploy a agent onto my system, and I can ask I can give my instructions to the agent, and the agent can do a lot of things for me. I don't have to sit in multiple meetings. Maybe I get the crux of all the meetings that has happened, and maybe for next meeting I can be prepared in a better way. I don't have to send MOMs to clients, or maybe if I'm speaking to my internal teams, I can already automate those things using a certain level of maturity that AI already has it in it. So on a high level, these are the three readiness tracks that I want to talk about, which is people readiness, org readiness, and trust and governance. Talking about these three framework, again, I want to talk about adopting, adapting, and accelerating. Across these three tracks, we have three different stages where we have people, organization. So think it as a maturity metrics for enterprise, I would say AI transformation. Each cell that you see here represents a capability that evolves every milestone in your organization. So it's not just that people readiness is important and then trust is not important, trust and governance. So all the 3 by 3 metrics that you see right now on the screen, every cell, each cell represents a capability evolution milestone for us. So that's how we have defined it. Mohit, if you can go on to the next slide, I want to deep down into adopting, adapting, and accelerating, so that it helps everyone understand what are the key indicators for you to understand where your organization is. So in adopting stage, AI exists, but without structured outcome mapping. So you will see fragmented experimentation, no standard KPIs. There's a lot of ambiguity around the leadership as well on success metrics. So if you are into this stage where you know that AI is being implemented forcefully without really understanding the use case for every business function in that particular industry, then you would always be able to see that there is a fragmented, isolated experimentation that happens across the team, and best practices has never been shared. No standard KPIs that needs to be tracked, which is where you need to define your leading and lagging indicators, which will entirely define the success of the project that you are actually implementing AI as AI deployment project into your organization. And if I talk about leadership ambiguity, a lot of times what CTO wants to see versus what CEO wants to see versus what CFO wants to see, these are very different metrics altogether, or matrices altogether, which is where there needs to be a multi alignment model that needs to come in, because everyone wants to have their standard KPI from their business function perspective. So it's very important to understand that adopting is where AI exists, but without structured outcome mapping. And let's go to the next slide where I'm going to talk about adapting and then, of course, accelerating. I'm not going to repeat a lot of things because a lot of things are here repeated where we have already talked about this. If you have any questions around this, feel free to put it on the chat so that I can immediately answer those questions. Slide 9, which is where we have this stage 2 adapting, turning activity into value. Here, the organizations begin generating early signals of value. But the challenge is it's not scalable, it's not repeatable, it's not, I would say, not something which is, in a cross functional setting you are not able to really see the use cases. So it's very important that this happens. There's a reason why this happens. I've already mentioned it there, but I'm just going to talk about one of the reasons is workflow re-engineering. People do not tend to change anything that they have been using for last 30 years. So there's a lot of resistance in terms of how AI can help do these things automatically, right? There's a lot of difference in terms of how you enable AI. We have seen so many companies talking about generic AI. We have seen so many companies that they only talk about very generic idea of how to implement AI. But AI has to do a lot with role specific enablement. If you are an HR and you do not know how to implement Copilot and how to use AI agent to create an onboarding bot for yourself, I don't think so. As an HR, you are qualified to be someone who can call themselves as AI literate. Now, what I'm trying to say here is developing an AI agent using Copilot for that particular role is different. In HR function is different than developing maybe an agent for a software developer. So it has to do a lot with a role based AI enablement to have a right context. Not everyone needs to understand everything in AI. They need to know what they need to know. So outcome instrumentation frameworks again becomes a very important framework, or I would say a very important aspect of the success, so that you know what you are measuring, and what you're measuring is actually the real value that you're extracting from what you're doing. So that's where AI, when we talk about AI, it's very vague. We have to be very specific with respect to industry, with respect to functional roles, with respect to ensuring that the workflow re-engineering or workflow augmentation or workflow integrations are rightfully approached by understanding the right use cases for your particular systems, infrastructure, people, and your customers. So I'm going to talk about, I think, a little more about the adapt ops model. Uh, you can go into the fourth slide directly from here. I mean, I don't want to talk about accelerating because it's again the same thing that we have talked about. Accelerating is more about scaling. Now, if we talk about adopt ops, which is built to turn AI investment into business outcomes, this is where we come in place. This is where we help organizations to drive everything that they want right now in AI. So it's a continuous loop that we have understood. There is where AI adopt comes in. So when I talk about AI adopt, it is discover, pilot, scale, and embed. This is not a project life cycle. It's, I would say, in a very simple business language, it's an AI operating system, maybe meant for large medium, or small enterprises. So the key idea here is AI transformation has never been and will never be linear, how it seems to be. It's iterative, it's feedback driven, and it continuously gets optimized and evolve every time when you give, a command to the system. So adapt or ops model has been included into what we do today. It has been the core pillar of our execution layer. So we discovered in discovery, we try understanding your use cases, we try understanding readiness gaps, we prioritize opportunities that can really have huge business outcomes. We assess people basis, certain assessment that we do with them, and then we also assess your infrastructure and your governance layer. So this is how Adopt Ops has been there for quite some time, and this is what we do today. So let me make this a little real for everyone to understand how we do it with other organizations. There are multiple packages. I would not be able to go directly into the sales and marketing packages that we have, but of course, I want everyone to understand on a high level what is that we offer today. So can you go to the next slide, Mohit? So if you see 90 by if you see what business outcomes from AI actually looks like, this is just one of the use cases that we have put in, and this is not something hyper. This is very hyper personalized. Secondly, this is benchmarked against what we actually saw versus what we are showing here. So 98% of active adoption, 310 hours reclaimed, 4,800 plus AI action executed. These outcomes didn't come from only one particular five different AI tools in specific industry and in specific job roles. They came from structured enablement, workflow integration, and governance around how to use AI in the most responsible way, and how to ensure that the governance is holistically satisfying uh, the need for that particular country. Because now you see there are so many rules to use AI in specific organization versus in specific countries. So we have to ensure that the model holistically answers all these things. So in short, the operating model that I was talking about, in short, the operating model is now the model in itself. So what we are trying to say here is AI literacy activation, role based playbooks, workflow integration, governance guardrails, and outcome visibility is what we want you to understand, that these are the five key steps what we follow to ensure that AI adoption looks real AI adoption. Now we have seen multiple organizations coming to us about, how they can show activity as an outcome. Now we have to understand that there's a difference between activity versus outcome, because the quality of activity defines the outcome, right? I mean, most organization measures how many times people have logged in, how many times people have used AI, maybe any LLM, to draft their email campaigns, their messages, their whatever, and how many times they have used API calls. These are all activities. But the business leaders, or I would say technical leaders, really care about productivity, cycle of reduction. I don't know. There are multiple five, six things that you can think about. One is productivity that I am very sure of. Cycle time reduction is another. Cost optimization in another. So in a short note, if I want to talk about from activity telemetry or activity uh, journal, we need to put it to the outcome intelligence, and that's where the mindset shift needs to happen from not just the leaders but to the minus ones, but to the frontliners as well. So now if we go about, if you can go into the next slide, Mohit, we can talk about the measurement of it. What separates AI activities from business outcome? This is what exactly I was talking about, right? So AI activity, you have adoption is measured, teams experiment independently, success depends on individuals, government reacts to usage, value is assured, activity is reported. A lot of time we see a reporting dashboard versus we need to see analytical dashboard. So dashboard as a part of measuring what is happening around the enterprise has also become a very important piece in terms of defining the success of AI. So for business outcomes, impact is measured, workflows are aligned, success becomes repeatable, governance enters scales, value is visible, outcomes are proven. So on a high level, what we are trying to say here is AI activity can be shown to anyone by telling or putting a perception management to it, which says that logins, usage, API calls are just AI activities. But real business outcome will come only from productivity gains, cycle time reduction, engagement metrics, cost optimization, and of course, reducing the load on the system and defining operational excellence using the productivity as one of the key metrics. Now, if you go into the next slide where we talk about a measurement, I have just put in one of the key dashboard that we put it for our clients as well, so that you understand what are the key adoption metrics, the business KPIs, and the governance signals. So all of you can see that success has to be very categorically defined on what parameters do we define what is success for us when we talk about AI as an ecosystem that is going to be deployed into your organization. So we have mentioned some adoption metrics here. You can have a look at it, the business KPIs and governance signals. Now, again, mind you, these things keeps on changing basis the lens of how you see the data. Now, if you want to see this data categorically from a CTO lens versus from a CEO lens versus from a maybe from a CFO lens, it clearly has a different perceived value, and that needs to change time and again depending upon who sees the data and what is important for them to see in the data. So it's very important to define the roadmap, milestones, leading and lagging indicators of success to even before you think of deploying AI. So I think now I'm going to really talk about the Adoptify value that we have and the plans that we have for our enterprise customers, so that you can understand how do we solve the problem and what do we do with the clients to go deep into their problem statements and then solve it for them. So I'm not going to take much of your time. Feel free to ask a lot of questions on the chat. I'll be able to answer it. Even if that is not possible, that's fine. We can have a AI consulting session where we can bring one of our consultants who can then help you understand what are your use cases, how we can help you scale to AI if you are into adopting stage, adapting stage, or accelerating stage. So if you can go into the next slide, Mohit, I want to talk about the value of Adoptify, what you have versus what's missing versus what Adoptify AI adds. I'm going to talk about, of course, everyone knows that right now everyone sees AI as tools that gets deployed that enhances some sort of capability or productivity for an employee or for an organization. We act as an alignment layer between what you have versus what you need or what AI can bring in. So AI capability, business operations, governance system, we bring outcome frameworks, operating models, measurement dashboards, and role based activation. All these four things that I have talked about, role based activation, helps individual and organization business function to contextualize their intelligence and deep down into how they can use AI to maximize the impact. If we talk about dashboards, of course we can create dashboards, but dashboards that really answers a lot of questions, not just regarding the reporting dashboard, but actually the analytical dashboard that can have multiple lens in place that can help not just the layer above management or the management layer, but the layer that is really executing it. They can actually see it, because once they see it, they will want to do it, and once they do it, it's very easy to execute and form a habit around utilization of AI or maybe utilization of AI models. So there are three different plans that I'm going to talk about what we do today. But on a high level, again, I want to reiterate that AI adoption creates activity, alignment creates business outcome. So don't fall prey for activities. Go after something which will give you outcome intelligence, which will help you drive your ROI. And again, you might be thinking that there are a lot of things that I have told about ROI, governance, people readiness, org readiness, maybe 3 into 3 matrix. All these things, if you see from a lens where really you want to do some adoption, I'm not going to say 100% adoption to your organization, but even if you drive 40%, 50% adoption, you'll be able to see at least 15 to 20% of productivity increase in certain business function. You will be able to see it more than 20%. So if you can go on to the next slide, Mohit, it will be helpful. So these are the plans that we offer right now, where we have adopting, adapting, and accelerating plans. So there's a typical engagement that happens with the clients, right? I mean, adapting is where you're exploring AI, where you want to understand the real nuance of AI. You want to really get your teams ready for AI. You have already bought in some licenses for Copilot, Gemini, maybe Claude, and you do not know how to use it. Maybe there's lack of prompting literacy to lack of workflow augmentation. That's where adopting stage comes into play. So it's where the organizations are really looking at exploring AI, and the primary focus is to establish the readiness. And that's where we have a plan for 2 to 4 weeks. Then we have adapting, which is again the engagement matrix goes between beyond 2 to 4 weeks, which is where 6 to 8 weeks comes in. And then we have, of course, accelerating, which is beyond 8 weeks, which is 12 weeks. So depending upon where you are, where your organization is in their AI journey, we would want to really help organization accordingly. So I think pretty much that I wanted to talk about AI journey. My closing thought here would again be AI doesn't create value on its own. Alignment between different business functions, between different stakeholders, alignment between workflow integration to deployment, to ensuring that you have the right team who has the right capability developed already to drive adoption. Adoption has a lot to do with people capability to drive it. So people, processes, governance, all these three things will drive the business capability to an extent where you'll be able to see a measurable ROI. I think this is pretty much that I wanted to talk about in this webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm not going to maybe waste anyone's time, but then I really appreciate people who have attended the webinar who want to ask a lot more questions around AI. This is not just a webinar to give you a lot more thoughtful understanding of what we do, why we do, but it has to tell you a little bit beyond that, that now typical AI conversation has been, you know, has been no more into picture. Now people really want to see the real flesh. They really want to see the value out of what they're spending into, and that's where Adoptify comes in. So as a part of Survey ecosystem, I just wanted to close my thought by telling everyone, as a part of Survey ecosystem, we have been into the industry for 27 years, catering to a lot of enterprise clients, specifically in US, and now we have jumped into APAC, EMEA market to help organizations scale faster, cheaper, and better. So on a high level, again, I'm repeating it, that we have around 5 different organizations. Every organization has a different objective. We have AI certifications, which we call it as AI certs. We have AI labs, which is where we have assessment tools for checking the people readiness. If Mohit, you can show the Survey Inc. website, that would be great. If you can just open it up for everyone to have a look at it, and then maybe that will help everyone to understand what we do, why we do. So we have, as leaders, we have developed around 5 to 6 different brands. Every brand today has a different meaning, and it has a different way of operating. It helps the complete AI readiness ecosystem to add value to what we do. So maybe Mohit, if you're okay, if you can share something on the browser, maybe that would be helpful for everyone, or I can do that.
Sure.
uh, so that everyone understands. And I really appreciate everyone's time. I would be able to take some name: David, Jane. Thank you for joining in. Really appreciate your time. So this is what we do as a Survey ecosystem today. If you want to understand, this is what we have Netcom Learning as a brand, which is a training company where instructors who are highly qualified comes in, trains your team, and then goes out. If you are not really keen on Netcom Learning, if you feel though, no, I don't need instructor-led training, I want to scale it up with N plus, this is where you have digital e-learning platform already available that easily gets integrated into your LMS, into your learning management system. People can go and learn into different bytes, and it is so developed that now you have multi modalities as well. Someone who wants to learn through podcast, they can learn through the podcast. Someone who is an avid reader, they can learn through reading. Someone who wants to just learn through e-learning, where they can see the visuals and hear the sound, audio visuals, they can learn through that. And if you talk about AI certs, there are role based AI certifications, where if you are into HR, finance, legal, you name any job role into any specific industry, how that helps an individual is where AI certification comes into place. Then we have labs, proctoring and credential apps. Then we have Adoptify as a channel where we have change management, dashboards, and then that is how we do the use case mapping, scoping. Everything happens at Adoptify AI. And then we have shared knowledge across Survey TV and Survey Foundation. So we are one of those organizations that has spent a lot into what we have built today to ensure that we are able to drive right ROI for our customers, and not just fluff around AI and then probably get out of it. So people readiness, org readiness, and governance are the three key pillars that we support today. Of course, we can help you on what to develop, but we do not do development for you. So we are not an AI development company. We help you deploy successfully so that you can drive ROI from what you have already have it versus what is already available as a plug and play. So that's pretty much. My name is Rahul, signing off. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. If not, no worries. We will get back to you with, with the idea that we want to help you. If you have any questions around there at that moment, we can speak to our consultants for 30 minutes. You can book a slot and then you can take it forward. Thank you so much for everyone who has joined this meeting. I appreciate your time and I hope I was able to add some value to what you know about AI versus what you want to see about AI in future about your organization. Thank you one and all for joining in. Thank you, Mohit. Thank you, Ashwini. And I think, Ashwini, you can take it forward from here on. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Rahul and Mohit. Well, as we wrap up today's session, I would like to heartfully thank you, Rahul, for sharing such a practical and actionable insights. And thank you, everyone, to join us today for thoughtful questions. And if you're unable to, answer your questions, if you are not done, and our team will follow up with you, after the session. And thank you once again for being a part of us today, and have a wonderful day, and looking forward to see you soon on the platform. Thank you again.